These are the times that some of us who served in the House yearn for the House procedures. But, Mr. President, we're in the Senate. We live by the Senate procedures, and we have to work our way through this. Everyone keep in mind, the underlying legislation that is bipartisan in nature, sponsored by the Democratic and Republican leaders, is good legislation. It's a significant step forward, anything that's happened in this country since Watergate. Ethics reform, lobbying reform, earmark reform, a very sound piece of legislation. Now, I'm going to be patient and listen to what others have to say, and we have, I don't know exactly, I think we have 12 amendments that are pending, maybe 13, and we're going to try to work our way through those. I've told my friend, Senator DeMint, that I know his heart's in the right place. He really believes in what he's doing. But, Mr. President, this amendment that he's offered is going to take a little more time. For everyone, understand that the DeMint Amendment strikes the definition of earmark in the underlying Reid-McConnell Substitute and replaces it with language that's basically the House-passed definition. Now, Mr. President, I'm happy to see the House doing their 100 hours and moving things along very quickly, and I admire and respect that. But having served in that body, I know how quickly they can move things, and frankly, sometimes how much thoughtful consideration goes into matters that are on that House floor. With this matter that Senator DeMint is trying to change, a lot of time went into this. A lot of time. Weeks of staff working so that Senator McConnell and I could agree to offer something in a bipartisan fashion. The earmark provision is good. It's in the underlying bill. Sometime, if we have an opportunity to vote on the DeMint amendment, I hope it's rejected, because the definition that Reid-McConnell has is very, very much preferable to what Senator DeMint is trying to do with earmark definition. I repeat, the underlying legislation that deals with earmarks was very carefully vetted by, and I repeat, weeks of work by our respective staffs. And it's stronger in various ways than DeMint. The Senate definition of earmark was included in last year's ethics bill. We have refined and defined it a little better now. The relevant committees worked with us on this on a bipartisan basis. We added language to the underlying section dealing with earmarks that passed 98 to nothing. I'm sorry, 90 to 8 last year. First, we added language to address the Duke Cunningham situation. Congressman Cunningham wrote his earmarks without actually naming the specific defense contractors he intended to receive federal contracts. And he never mentioned the defense contractors, but there's only one defense contractor in the world that met his specific definition in that legislation. Under DeMint, that would not have to be listed. Now, Mr. President, under the new definition, the Reid-McConnell Substitute, a member cannot evade the disclosure requirement by clever drafting. Can't do that. An earmark is present if the entity to receive federal support is named or if it is described in such a manner that only one entity would qualify. Second, the substitute includes an improved definition of targeted tax benefit. Under the DeMint definition, a tax benefit would only qualify as an earmark if it benefited 10 or fewer beneficiaries. But that leaves open the possibility of drafting mischief. And what kind of mischief could you draft? For example, someone could easily write a provision for 11 or 15 or 50 beneficiaries to evade the definition. The Reid-McConnell definition says a tax earmark is anything which has the practical effect of providing more favorable tax treatment to a limited group of taxpayers when compared with taxpayers that are similarly situated. This subjective standard will capture more earmarks far than the rigid DeMint definition, this 10 or fewer beneficiaries. Actually, the Reid-McConnell definition is based on the definition of targeted tax benefit. Where did we come up with this, Mr. President? Senator Gregg, Judd Gregg, in his line item veto bill. That's where we got that. I don't like the line item veto bill, but I like his definition of targeted tax benefit. That's where we got that. I think Senator Gregg has found a sensible definition for this elusive concept. Third, the Reid-McConnell substitute requires members to certify they have no personal financial stake in the earmark. This seems to be a common sense requirement that wasn't in the underlying bill. We added that to it. It's important that the Senate rules be amended slowly and with careful bipartisan deliberation. Mr. President, my friend, the distinguished senator from North Carolina, South Carolina, North, South, they're close together. The distinguished senator from South Carolina has said, Mr. President, that this is exactly like the House provision. I say to my friend, that's one of the problems I have. Because I frankly don't think that they spent the time on this that we have. The House can change its rules at will. And they do. We can't. The Senate is a continuing body. Our rules are permanent. It takes 67 votes to change a Senate rule. So when we write a Senate rule, we write it in concrete. Earmark disclosure will be a major change in the way the Senate works. We should adopt the Reid-McConnell version rather than the House version in the DeMint amendment. If we need to revisit the issue later, we can do that. I would appeal to my friend from South Carolina. I repeat, I know you're doing this because you think it's the right thing to do. But take the opportunity to look at what's here. It's better than the House version, so much better. I've only touched upon why it's better than the House version. And frankly, as we all know, we're going to have to do some work in conference on this. And if the House version is what we send over there, there's no way in the world to improve this. So I'd ask my friend that let's take another look at this. Do we need to vote on this? I hope not. This should not be a partisan issue. This bill is not meant to be partisan. That's why we worked so hard. One of the hardest provisions staff had to work on to get McConnell and I to agree on this was this earmark provision. Senator McConnell and I are members of the Appropriation Committee. Well, I used to be for 20 years. Appropriation Committee. I know the appropriation process very, very well. And I think, with all due respect, the DeMint amendment will weaken earmarks. Let's see what we come up with the underlying amendment that Reid and McConnell submitted to the Senate. Mr. President, I note the absence of quorum.